Hello there, my name is Pavel Stelmach, and now we'll unveil the top news of recent days. Putin announced a change in the nuclear doctrine of the Russian Federation. It is noteworthy that back in June, the issue of the possibility of nuclear weapons was raised at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, and then the Russian president stated that there was no corresponding level of threat. However, already in September, based on published information, the Kremlin significantly heightened the possibility of using nuclear weapons. The external entourage of this decision is noteworthy. Documents of this order, as a rule, are developed without unnecessary coverage in the press and become known to the press only after the publication of their open part. In this case, we are dealing with PR support for the decision even before the appearance of the text of the new doctrine. Moreover, Putin's speech contains a number of political theses but is maximally devoid of specifics on the mechanisms of using nuclear weapons. Putin said that he could strike, but did not say a word about its possible scale in each of the scenarios he voiced, which naturally leaves room for a number of recipients of information. The second component is the time of decision making and the corresponding statements. Here, several processes coverage at once. First, the attack of the Ukrainian armed forces on the Kursk region became a surprise for the Kremlin and an information pretext, forcing even a number of controlled resources to publicly doubt the effectiveness of the so-called special military operation. The attempt to squeeze out the Ukrainian forces has not yet yielded any results for Russia. At the same time, Russia, despite its advance in the Donetsk region, has not been able to capture any large cities. That is, it was not possible to provide a picture of victory at the front to neutralize the negative impact of the Kursk operation. In recent months, the Ukrainian armed forces have significantly increased the intensity of strikes on the rear areas of Russia and were able to hit several extremely important and noticeable to the average person targets. We are talking about oil and weapons depots. The process of transferring aviation to Ukraine has begun, and in recent weeks there have been discussions about the advisability of allowing Ukraine to use long-range Western weapons to strike rear areas of Russia. So Putin's public communication on the topic of the possible use of nuclear weapons is rather an information operation, or if you like, nuclear blackmail. This opinion is also held in the US and EU. As Peter Stano, a representative of the European Union Foreign Affairs Service, stated, Putin's statements about his readiness to use nuclear weapons in the event of an attack on Russia with conventional weapons and plans to change Russia's military doctrine for this purpose indicate his irresponsible behavior and desire to undermine international security.
Putin is playing gamble with his nuclear arsenal. So this is just the continuation of the very irresponsible and unacceptable behavior on the side of Putin, showing basically to the whole world, especially during the United Nations General Assembly High-Level Week, his true face, that he doesn't shy away from playing the nuclear gamble over and over again. So we, of course, strongly reject these threats, and the position of the European Union remains unchanged. And we are trying to convey this position also to the other partners, exactly pointing to them, other partners in the international community, pointing to them how reckless and how irresponsible behavior we see from the side of someone who is representing a country that is a permanent member of the Security Council, that is charged. The task of the Security Council is to maintain peace in the world. But he is undermining this. So this is fitting the pattern of his behavior so far, unveiling his true face during a very important high-level international event going on right now in New York.
Russian blackmail is unlikely to quickly change the volume of aid provided to Ukraine, but it may well become an additional argument for politicians who oppose moving the war to the Russian territory. At the same time, the revision of Russia's nuclear doctrine happened precisely at the time of Zelensky's visit to the USA, which once again demonstrates how Putin subtly senses the West's fears and quite successfully plays on them. During the entire time of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it was not possible to cure the Western elites of the fear of a nuclear war with Russia, which has haunted them since the Cold War. Analyzing Putin's new doctrine makes no sense, because aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear state, but with the participation or support of a nuclear state, has already occurred. Western equipment driven by a Ukrainian soldier moves through the territory of the Kursk region. Therefore, one can only guess what Putin will consider aggression and whether he will take into account the realities on the ground. But still, not everything is so good from Putin's point of view, because the renewal of the nuclear doctrine and threats, according to his plan, allegedly was to be preceded by the full success test of Sarmat intercontinental missile, but it could not take off. And in fact, Putin's nuclear blackmail is fear of Ukrainian weapons, which deprives the Russian Federation of strategic weapons depots, harms Putin's ability to continue his war of terror. Joe Biden announced a surge in security assistance for Ukraine and a series of additional actions to help Ukraine win the war. The Department of Defense will allocate all of its remaining security assistance funding that has been appropriated for Ukraine by the end of this year. Biden also authorized $5.5 billion in Presidential Drawdown Authority to ensure this authority does not expire, so that the administration can fully utilize the funding appropriated by Congress to support the drawdown of U.S. equipment for Ukraine and then replenish U.S. stockpiles. The Department of Defense is announcing $2.4 billion in security assistance through the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, which will provide Ukraine with additional air defense, unmanned aerial systems, and air-to-ground munitions, as well as strengthen Ukraine's defense industrial base and support its maintenance and sustainment requirements. To enhance our long-range strike capabilities, President decided to provide Ukraine with the Joint Standoff Weapon Long-Range Munition, or the Smart Bomb. To further strengthen Ukraine's air defenses, the Department of Defense will refurbish and provide Ukraine with additional Patriot air defense battery and provide Ukraine with additional Patriot missiles. The U.S. will also expand training for Ukrainian F-16 pilots, including by supporting the training of additional 18 pilots next year. To counter Russian sanctions evasion and money laundering, the Department of Justice, the Department of the Treasury, and the U.S. Secret Service has taken action to disrupt a global cryptocurrency network in coordination with international partners.
I am grateful to President of the United States, Joe Biden, United States Congress and its both parties, Republicans and Democrats, as well as the entire American people for today's announcement of major U.S. defense assistance for Ukraine totaling $7.9 billion and sanctions against Russia. On behalf of the Ukrainian people and our brave warriors on the front line, I thank our closest ally, the United States, for finding a way to allocate the remaining security assistance to Ukraine and ensure that the presidential authority is not expired by the end of the U.S. financial year. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on social network X.
We will use this assistance in the most efficient and transparent manner to achieve our major common goal, victory for Ukraine, just and lasting peace, and transatlantic security. As Volodymyr Zelensky said, Ukraine and the US remain close allies dedicated to defending freedom, human life, and shared security in Europe and beyond. No matter what politicians or diplomats do, events on the front line are of decisive importance in any war. And what is currently happening in different directions, we will discuss with Paul Smith, or Yuri, US Army veteran and Ukrainian Army veteran too. Hello and welcome.
Nice to be here.
It's really pleasant to see you in our studio. And I know that you were a veteran of the 59th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Can you please share some achievements and problems that you faced while you were serving in the Defense Forces of Ukraine?
Some of the achievements that we had, I had been fighting since the beginning of the war. So I arrived into Ukraine in the March 13th of 2022. And from March until the offensive in the Mykolaiv region in August of that same year, we had difficulties with training and integrating some of the veterans that were coming to volunteer and fight in Ukraine. After that point, Ukraine had become very more professional with a lot of Western tactics, and we were able to achieve victories against Russian positions through a lot of these tactics, utilizing the donated weapon systems from the United States and her partners. Some of the difficulties that we had faced was, although we were getting aid, we weren't getting it in the numbers required to fight in a prolonged, high-intensity conflict that Ukraine finds itself in. So we had to adapt and utilize what we had and Ukrainian ingenuity in order to make the most of what little we were donated.
And the international support for Ukraine from the United States in particular is still going on. How
Yeah.
insufficient numbers it could change the situation on the battlefield, in your opinion, and why these decisions are made so slowly?
Well, right now I'm in Washington, D.C. I just got done doing a 3-day long conference here, talking to members of uh, the Senate and members of Congress in order to explain to them the situation on the ground in Ukraine using my personal firsthand experiences. And there's a lot of uh, there is some bipartisanship, but there's also a lot of uh, individuals with reservations regarding the war in Ukraine. A lot of it comes down to misinformation and even Russian propaganda regarding why the U.S. shouldn't involve itself. So there's been a lot of tiptoeing around how best to defend Ukraine. We get a lot of the congressmen and senators saying that we support Ukraine, we want to support Ukraine, but sometimes it's just words and not action. And it's important to realize that not only is this war a lot more intense than what the United States had experienced both in Iraq and Afghanistan in the early 2000s combined, but the largest amount of material and finance needed to successfully win against an adversary the size of Russia with its partners Iran and North Korea.
Well, why is it so difficult to convince these people in the Senate and Congress to do the right thing, to support Ukraine to win over the Russian aggression, and rather not do some concessions to the aggressor, like fixing their success on the battlefield, demonstrating that you can, with blatant force, rip and tear the international order set after World War II?
Is a lot of it has to do with the population of the United States. Although a huge majority of the U.S. does support Ukraine's war effort, they are experiencing a successful Russian propaganda regarding, not supporting Ukraine. So that is translated to their representatives. Although their representatives do receive a lot more information regarding the situation on the ground in Ukraine, a lot of that's not really well conveyed to the American population. And I spend a lot of my time through my social media channel, through advocacy with various Ukrainian organizations to talk to a lot of these individuals who have these misconceptions of what's really going on around in Ukraine, and then what they're receiving off of their YouTube, off of their Facebook, off of their Twitter feeds, that heavily skews towards Russian propaganda, is how they feel that that's actually going. So it's not only a battle on the battlefields of Ukraine, it's also a battle here with the people of the United States and the Western countries in what is really happening in Ukraine. When I tell them specific facts that I had experienced firsthand, they are absolutely shocked, and they say, "Oh no, that can't be." And I would have to remind them that I have video, or this is a photo of me there, like I saw it with my own eyes, I had experienced it.
Yeah, and just one short lasting question. Are we moving in the direction of allowing hitting Russian bases with ATACMS missiles, with Western missiles? Are we moving in that direction?
That is the main purpose of why I was here in Washington, D.C. these last few days. I was using the example of the Iraq war back in the 90s, where Iraq invaded Kuwait. The United States didn't just bomb the Iraqi forces in Kuwait. They were able to strike military targets all over Iraq. And I was explaining that they're expecting Ukraine not to be able to hit these staging areas. Ukraine has become very capable at improvising and even rapid prototyping of various new weapon systems, such as the drones that took out those ammunition depots. And but those drones aren't big enough to take out the explosives on those drones aren't big enough to take out the airstrip of a base that's launching glide bomb. So I really made it impactful to these senators and these congressmen that it is very important that we pressure the Biden administration to allow Ukraine to use these long-range munitions to strike at these Russian targets, these Russian military targets, so that we can. This is the only way that we're going to really bring this war to an end. This is my third trip to DC since I returned from the front lines in Ukraine last year, and the first two times I went to DC, I was begging them to give me a rocket launcher so I can blow up a tank. Now I'm telling them we need that rocket to blow up the tank factory because the Russians are just replacing that tank within a few weeks. And I'm going to have to replace that, ask them for another rocket launcher soon after. So the quickest and the cheapest way to end this war is for Ukraine to be able to destroy these Russian targets inside Russia.
Thank you for what you're doing for your advocacy. That is really important to have it in directly in DC. So thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you. You have a good day too. Slava Ukraine.
Heroям слава. It was Paul Smith, aka Yuri, US Army veteran and Ukrainian Army veteran in our UTV studio. And this concludes our today's video. Thank you for watching and staying with us. Comment, like and subscribe to our UTV English channel for more news from Ukraine because it is your support that really matters for us. Goodbye.